Indie World, Gamescom, multiple Nintendo Direct announcements have all come and passed, and despite our unwavering optimism, there is still no sight of our dearly beloved. Truly a star-crossed fate, it seems. Please join these sad, aimless little grubs in a ceremonious display of grief for our ill-fated sequel to be. Okay, that's enough. Instead of taking time to continue my Hollow Knight Ambience series, or my Weird Boss Tips series, or my totally original Challenge Run series that takes 0% inspiration from any other entity on this platform, no seriously, I promise, I've decided to just recycle a video topic I've already covered like 3 times and serve it piping hot to you hollowheads on a plastic middle school lunch tray. Yep, we're taking that one 20-minute Silksong gameplay showcase from well over a year ago, and we're just gonna roll up the tube and squeeze the last few drops of ever-living life out of that motherfucker like Sensodyne toothpaste. Also, this is my reminder to you that you haven't brushed your teeth in a week and the inside of your mouth smells like an elephant giving birth, so please go and do that. Since Hornet is able to utilize a moveset based on speed and acrobatics, it makes sense that this would be conducive to a different level design, with more spaced out architecture and platforming challenges that kind of complement her abilities. I've mentioned this in other videos prior to this one, but just to reiterate, you really can tell a lot about the nature of a biome in Hollow Knight due to its architecture, how soft or sharp the background details are, the harshness of the color scheme being used, and other things as well. I think the best example of this in Hollow Knight would be the soft and rounded level design in the resting grounds or the city to communicate this comforting sense of peace or familiarity, contrasted by the really jagged and aggressive architecture in biomes like Deep Nest or the White Palace. Now, if we are to take this premise and apply it to what we've seen so far in Silksong, we can actually make some pretty educated assumptions on what the game's progression could look like based on how each biome is designed. It makes plenty of sense that the Moss Grotto is the game's very first area because everything seems lush and green and friendly and nothing's trying to eat your face off, to my knowledge, whereas a later level like the Deep Docks uses more rigid metallic design with lots of factory ambience and more environmental hazards. The Bone Forest is absolutely flooded with environmental hazards and aggressive platforming, which to me contextualizes it as a later game area. In the location where Hornet is receiving this ability, you can see sharper and more jagged architecture surrounding the screen, which might be indicative that whatever this scene is, it might not happen until much later on in the game's plot. Or I could just be overthinking the whole design thing like usual, and none of what I'm saying will even be close to true. I guess we'll find out. In Hollow Knight, we could enhance our knight's abilities with charms, Paelor, and spell upgrades. And in Silksong, it looks like these various tools shown here on the UI are serving an almost identical purpose. There are a few differences in how these are implemented, namely the crest seen here on the left portion of the inventory, and the crest we see being brought up here in the gameplay showcase is something called a Wanderer's Crest, and it has room for one tool or trinket or secret power whatever thing from each color category. This leads me to believe the crests themselves can be found throughout Farloom and exchanged to accommodate different playstyles. There's one neat little discovery that I haven't seen a lot of people mention, which is the Change Crest item in the lower left. There's what looks like the Wanderer's Crest that we have equipped currently, and then there's this Weaver-looking crest hiding behind it. If this is an actual crest we can find and use, I'm assuming it may contain multiple blue slots for a silk-related tool, and it might be a good fit for players that like using spells. The tools have been compartmentalized into red, blue, and yellow categories. The red items seem to fall into the category of consumables, these single-use items that need to be refilled or repaired, such as the Pimpillo, the drone-like familiar that looks kinda like Glowing Womb but not really, and the Lifeblood Syringe. The blue category seems intended to enhance Hornet's silk-related powers, which seem to have the same purpose as spells in Hollow Knight. We can see here Hornet's frontal silk lance attack thing should remind you a lot of the Vengeful Spirit spell and its equally linear movement. Additionally, the center of the blue border bears a similar appearance to the Weaver emblem that we've seen a lot in Deep Nest. And in specific charms like the Weaver Song, we've never really been given that much intel on what the yellow-colored tools do. But we aren't completely helpless. We know that items colored red are most likely for tactical use, consumables, items designed to give Hornet a more practical edge in combat. The blue items are specifically related to Hornet's usage of silk. This is where we might find tools that could compare to Shaman Stone or Spell Twister or other similar charms in Hollow Knight. So knowing the yellow tools are neither of these things kinda helps us in narrowing down what they could be. I'm guessing these might be simple convenience or quality of life tools. Things like increasing the amount of rosaries pulled from enemies, maybe a navigation tool like Wayward Compass or something to that effect. Hollow Knight's path to completion is vast and incredibly open-ended. You had everything between the delicate flower quest to the 3 Colosseum stages. I guess you could call these side quests insofar as beating the game didn't really hinge on any of these ventures. Silksong's approach to side quests, however, seems a bit more traditional. And when looking at the various bounty boards set up across Farloom, it becomes pretty obvious that this game is shaping up to be a pretty good deal larger than its 2017 counterpart. Instead of looking for mask shards or Palor, you're serving other characters in other towns, doing everything from gathering mossberries to hunting down Pilgrims and Plumed Rhino and other rare creatures. I'm just gonna go ahead and guess the target for this hunt might be a type of rhinoceros beetle or something with like a feather attached to its head. Actually, do we have a picture of, yep, that's, of course that's what they look like. That's fucking terrifying. Each quest has their own category. Hunts require you to track down and most likely battle a specific foe, while gathering missions are completed by scavenging resources. The Wayfarer missions seem interesting, and unfortunately, at no point does the cursor ever highlight the description of what this quest is, but perhaps it has something to do with discovering secret locations or temples that regular maps and whatnot wouldn't really show you. At least that's what I feel like it is. Footage of Hornet's healing mechanic has been solid evidence of the game's ultimately faster pace. Hornet can take advantage of a varied assortment of nimble movements and dodge around enemies in ways that the Knight simply couldn't. This means the healing window is much shorter, enabling the player to heal through much more chaotic encounters. Healing also takes a much higher quantity of resources than in Hollow Knight, and if your healing is interrupted by an attack, the subsequent penalty is that much greater, as the heal will simply just not take, in addition to losing all the silk you tried to heal with. If you're familiar with the channel, I've done quite a few videos sharing tips on various bosses and how to tackle them. And one thing I always enjoyed during boss fights was analyzing all the ways you could heal safely in between attacks. And I feel like I'm going to have lots of fun looking for opportunities like that in Silksong simply because the healing window is that much more flexible. Whereas healing through a faster attack combo in Hollow Knight would be nothing short of suicide, Hornet might be able to heal through more chaos and save herself, creating what I would think are some pretty clutch moments in boss battles. Hornet can sprint. She can sprint fast as a motherfoe. I was getting the impression that the sprint ability could be used for running quickly over hot coals in the deep docks so as not to take damage, but according to people that were available to play the demo, that's actually not what's happening in this part of the footage. And even if you were to stop your momentum, you would not take damage like it was previously assumed. I would imagine sprinting before a jump would give you a pretty decent distance boost for clearing wider chasms and such, giving you the same utility as the MOTHWING cloak from Hollow Knight. Additionally, there's the spider-like backstep animation that we saw at one point during the reveal trailer, which also might be a unique ability you would obtain from fighting a Weaver-themed boss. As I've taken a closer look at it, I've decided that this Weaver pedestal being shown here at the end of the trailer might actually be a sort of silk power that Hornet is absorbing from it. Strands of silk being drawn into the character kind of reminds me of how soul particles would be drawn towards your knight whenever you collect a new soul ability. Normally in Hollow Knight, you wouldn't usually get the abilities from the actual bosses, but rather pretty soon after the boss. It's hard for me to imagine that a boss fight or some sort of pivotal moment in the game wouldn't be followed by Hornet's acquiring of this ability. Other movement-related abilities seem to include a sort of wall jump akin to the Mantis Claw, and also the ability to throw your needle and zip to it in midair to cover wider distances. And speaking of overthinking, we overthink plenty on our Discord server. Because we have a Discord server and stuff. Yeah, sorry, I can't think of a good segue, but hey, we have a Discord server. And before anyone asks, yeah, cursing is allowed. If you're interested in engaging with some more of the channel's community, you can find a link to the Forge in the description. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Take care.